to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As you know, my custom, guys, is to welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things that I deem very, very expensive. That is their time. Time is such a precious commodity. Many of us do not learn how to respect and honor her. And those who have learned how to respect and honor her and love her, she will reward you as you gain insight as how to utilize your time while you're here on this precious planet. The other is the journey. The journey has creative power. It created Jeremy, the individual before us. And so we want to thank him for coming and sharing both of these precious commodities. And it is our hope that you, as you engage in listening, that you become a hearer and that you will change your life. And we will send you to him so that he can escort you to that next level that you need to be. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. I'm so happy to be here and have a good conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. How do you serve? As I mentioned, I always ask this question. Tell the people, how do you serve? Because that is, and I try to invite them to hurry up and get here, Jeremy,
Yeah, yeah.
because I tell them it's a totally different lifestyle.
hmm
Um, it's a totally different mindset. It is totally something that only a true servant gets to experience. And so, how
hmm
do you serve mankind?
Yeah, it's funny because it's like you're beginning with the end. It's like usually we talk about all this and then it's like, how do you serve? So
Yeah,
let's start from the very beginning. The way that I serve, and this is what I landed on. Know we're going to talk about purpose and a lot of different things today, but really it's just to be a messenger of hope. That's how I
yeah,
serve, is to provide hope to people. And that's it. It's very simple. It's just one word, hope. There's
yeah.
not like a long paragraph. That's what it is, just to be a messenger, not the messenger. I'm not the messenger. I think a lot of us can be messengers of different things, but hope, man, like that's what I want to give people. And that's
Yeah,
what I
that is
am giving. Not one, but I am giving that as
a
well. Yeah.
and actually, that is a powerful word when you look into the study and the history of that word hope.
Yes.
That word hope is meaning that you have an earnest expectation. There's nothing wishing about that word hope. And so that is a powerful word. So I'm excited about this. One of our
Yeah.
customs here, Jeremy, is to go back
Mhm.
into what I call that time machine, which is memory. We go and travel back a little, if you
Yeah.
will, and we reside in the first space that you and I hang out for a couple of years that is known as the family. And we hang
Mhm.
out there before we began to move forward and embark on our lifestyle, if you will,
Mhm.
our life. But invite us to your family unit.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah. My family, I grew up, I have two brothers, two sisters, and grew up between my parents were divorced. So my biological parents lived about maybe 45 minutes from each other. But our home, there was a lot of love in the home. However, like when I was young, my parents divorced when I was just really like an infant, basically. So I never grew up in that necessarily nuclear structure. So um, it was discipline from my parents. Um, Luckily, I mean, there was no like abuse like that or
Yeah,
anything. I had a pretty good upbringing. It was one that was filled with encouragement. It's like I had my brothers. I was the youngest of my brothers. So from my mother, there were three of us, the three boys, my two older brothers and me. So in a sense, I was the youngest there. And then
yeah,
for my dad's kids, I'm kind of in the middle. So, you know, people talk about qualities of the oldest and the youngest in the middle. And I'm kind of like a mix. I don't feel like I have middle child tendencies, but more probably youngest. But something where we played sports. I'm from Oklahoma originally, so
yeah.
when we did vacation, like we might go to Colorado. I have family in Florida, so we would go to Florida sometimes. But it was definitely one of the household was of love, but the surrounding, dealing with divorced parents and court
Yeah.
cases and things like that. Certainly, some of the trauma that you and I talked about off camera before we started this session here.
Yeah. It is one of the things why I do this,
Mhm.
Jeremy, is to go back because, and in going back into the family, it's one of the first structures that we reside. And
Yep.
the trauma comes, it could be very benign things.
hmm
Mom and dad, a young individual comes to mom and dad, ask a question. Mom and dad truly are busy and they will say something like, no, not right now, we're busy, or something like that, and that
Yeah.
child interprets that as rejection,
Hmm.
and that rejection and that well, we call it a trauma, but it
Hmm.
was very simple. It was nothing mean, but that information that will cause, and I tell people that trauma or situations that are drastic will cause an individual, Jeremy, to make internal decisions.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's not anything that one is verbalized, but that little individual has verbalized it within themselves, and it directs their life. As you were growing amongst
Hmm.
this mixture of family and middle and all of these different things, Jeremy,
Hmm.
if you could, how were you doing? How was Jeremy, that young child in that mix? What type of personality did you see him begin to start formulating that will guide him through his life?
Hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of that, I mean, certainly in the home, it builds character and helps shape your personality and beliefs. Um, my sisters are younger than me, like several years younger. So I tended to be growing up closer to my brothers because we were all like 2 years and 4 years apart.
Yeah.
So I always had them, and they were always a big support for me, so if I was having any issues with the parents, like the brothers, we all stuck together, so from that respect, it was like I never felt not cared for. I mean, there were times I felt like I couldn't talk to my parents, and that's probably most kids anyway, because
Yeah, yeah.
there's a dynamic there. But I think more what kind of set me apart when I was younger was just school and friends of school. And I remember there were the bullies at school, and I wasn't bullied from a probably a textbook definition, but there were times I was picked on by a couple of guys growing up. But for me, it's like I didn't want that to happen, so I was like, how can I become friends with this person? And
Yeah.
even someone that was quote unquote the known bully of the school, I was always like, what if I don't want to be on that person's bad side? How can I win that person over? So I would be nice to them, and I would include that person, and I would basically create a situation where I didn't pose a threat, where I needed to have that energy thrown my way. So I think through, and even like just kids growing up, like, jonesing on each other, talking about each other's mama, and cracking on each
Yeah,
other. It's
yeah,
like I always wanted to have like the best jokes. So some of it was like I have to be the wittiest, but I also have to find a way to connect
yeah,
and invite people in. But I'm not going to be outdone. And that's
yeah.
probably just me being the youngest of three, older brothers. So there was almost like this competition that was always in me, but not a competition where I'm trying to crush you, one where I'm going to respect you and also try to include you.
Yeah, it's a powerful insight for a young individual to have, to
Mm,
begin to tap into that, the mindset of critical thinking as to how can I engage with this individual that is totally has a different belief, different mindset than me. How can I bring him or her onto my side?
hmm.
That's a pretty intense gift, if you will, to recognize as a young kid, and then to start honing that skill, if you will, as a
Yeah.
young individual. As you begin to move through life and you begin honing your skill, watching it within your family unit as well as the schools and so forth,
Mhm,
Jeremy, and you're heading into your life and looking into high school. Tell us a
mhm,
little about high school. How is that when you have more of a bully, more of
mhm.
all these other additional personalities and belief system are coming from all over the place, and
Yeah.
testosterone from the men, and all
Mhm.
the other things that start showing up in high school. What was that like for you?
Yeah, high school was actually an extremely pivotal time in my life. And I probably wouldn't be on this camera right here with you and speaking to your audience now if it wasn't for high school.
Yeah,
There's a big shift in my life in that I grew up in a town called Guthrie, Oklahoma. I was there from kindergarten all the way through my freshman year in high school. Everybody knows everybody. And then my dad ended up moving sophomore year, so I went to a new school where my
yeah,
mother lived in Oklahoma City, and my older brother, that's 2 years older than me, actually 1 grade older than me. we moved. So he was a junior in high school. I was a sophomore. So we knew
Yeah.
nobody. And so going from a place, a town where everybody knew everybody, I was popular, I was accepted, I was comfortable, I was confident, to basically knowing nobody, amongst a school of people who matriculated in, who've known each other most of their life, was
Yeah.
really, really hard. So it was a completely different time for me, to adjust to that. Like it was, especially, gosh, that sophomore year, for most of the year, like I'm at the lunchroom table by myself, basically. And that's
Yeah.
like, as we get, I know we'll talk more about the book in a little bit, but it's like I talk about, that's when I started to get into music. I started to write poetry. I started to, write verses. And that's kind of what kept me locked in, and really kept me, it provided, I don't know, an outlet for me, when I didn't
Yeah.
have someone that I could, a friend group that I could really hang out with. So that spawned into, like, I'm not a survival, but it just was something where my old life that I had of comfort was lost. And how do I transition to this new, trying to get to know people? Because I was just, I don't know, it was a very different, challenging time for me.
Yeah. Music, which is absolutely, I love music. I'm a musician.
Oh,
How
cool.
did you begin to tap into that, Jeremy? What was it that sparked the interest, if you will,
Yeah.
into music?
Yeah, well, this is, to me, it's funny. So I was always like a big, like, hip hop fan, Beastie
Yeah.
Boys, Run DMC, like, and where I grew up, like, whatever, like, I would always save my money, and whatever was coming out, I was buying it. So
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine, like, in junior high or middle school, that was like, "Man, Jeremy, like, you listen to all this music, like, have you ever thought about being a rapper?" I'm like, "I'm not gonna be a rapper. Like, I just like to listen and consume the music." He's like, "No, I bet you could write something." And I was like, "No, like, I'm just gonna be a listener of it." But then when I moved and I didn't know anybody, I was
Yeah.
like, well, I had some beats that I was listening to on my Walkman back in the cassette
Yeah.
days with the Walkman.
Yeah.
And
I'm
I
familiar.
would actually make beats. I had a karaoke machine, with two decks, and I would play
Yeah.
like a piece, like maybe 4 bars of a song, an intro, and then I'd pause it, rewind it, hit play, and record again. So I'd make like 3 to 5 minutes of just a beat loop going over and over,
Yeah.
because we didn't have like all the technology that exists now. So I
Yeah.
would just take a whole cassette with all these different beats, and I would just have a notebook, and I would just start writing and just filling up
Wow.
notebooks. And then I was like, a friend of mine, we did a song together, and we let some people hear it, and people loved the song. So we're like, that's it.
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to do. It's like, it's
Yeah.
music. So it was freeing, it was therapeutic, and I had a talent to do it. So it
Yeah.
was something that just kind of came naturally, but out of someone planting that seed, saying,
Hmm.
you should try this. And I think we do that a lot. People see
Oh,
something in
yeah.
you that you don't see, and we kind of put our defense up because we think we know everything. But sometimes you just have to, like, maybe they see something I don't. Let me try that and see what happens.
Yeah. I think it usually, um, I've interviewed so many people, and I very
Mhm.
rarely hear the ones when they said, "Yeah, someone said try this," and I was like, "Oh yeah, let me go ahead and do
Right,
that."
right, right.
You know? And so
Yeah.
it's
Usually
always
it's like,
takes,
no,
yeah, it takes
yes.
some time. And you're like before, but I think what happens is it's a seed, and seeds are very powerful
Yeah.
when you meditate on them,
Hmm.
and that seed that is planted within your thoughts and your garden, if you will begin
Yeah.
to bear some fruit as you begin to uh, dabble here and there. But it takes some time when it manifests. So
Yeah.
here you are, you're beginning to dabble, Jeremy. You found
Yep.
something that you really excel in, and you felt comfortable. You felt that this feels like home, and
Hmm.
you're now heading towards you're pursuing your life, moving. Your age is hitting you. You're thinking about your college and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And what was it? I know music is one of those driving forces. Once you she grabs hold of you.
Hey, you know.
It's not gonna happen.
That's
So
it.
you're
It's a
heading
wrap.
into college. Yeah, it's a wrap. You're
Yep.
heading into college. What were you thinking heading in that direction? Now you're going to be looking back at your foundation, basically your family, and you're now
Hmm.
heading in to create your space, as you will. What was that conversation you had with yourself, and why did you go to the direction you did?
Yeah. So with college, like I decided that and maybe some of it's like I wasn't necessarily put heavy expectations on me, like you have to go to college. It just seemed like that's what I knew, like that's the path. So there was never any hesitancy for me to think twice, like, do I want to go to college or not? So I did go to a University of Oklahoma, and but one of my main reasons of going was like I want to be a better business person because I want to own a record label or a music production company, and this will give me tools that I need. So I have this talent for music, and this will help me create a business out of the music. So I was University of Oklahoma for 3 years, and my friend that I was doing music with at the time, him and I were talking because we started like recording in a studio, and I put out a cassette back when I was, I think, a junior or senior in high school. Like I put out a cassette, and then we just kept recording. So by the end of my junior year at Oklahoma, I was like, man, I've got to get out of here, like, because I really want to pursue music. And I still want to finish my education, but I need to move on. So
Yeah,
I talked to my friend and was like, hey, I want to move to Atlanta. I have an aunt in Atlanta, which is where I reside now. And I said, I want to go out there for a summer and just see what happens. Like, I want you to come with me so we can try to keep this group together and see what we can make happen with music. And so he agreed to come with me. We came out to Atlanta for a summer. Like the first show that we did was like an Apollo style show where, they'll boo you off the
nice.
stage if they don't like
Yeah.
you. And, we ended up winning the show. And it was like
Oh,
our first show in Atlanta. It was sponsored by one of the radio stations down here. And after that, it was a wrap. It was like, okay, look,
yeah,
we don't have this opportunity in Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma is not
yeah.
a hotbed for like hip hop artists. So we ended up staying, getting jobs. I finished school, and it was the grind really started then, because it was like going to school full time while I'm working full time, like, taking 16 to 19 hours.
Yeah,
I was working at the school radio station, and then we're like recording. We ended up getting some equipment in our apartment, so we're recording, and then we're also performing. So we're doing all
yeah,
this like at one time. It was a hustle time of life where like 4 hours of sleep is like what we get, and that's it. And it
yeah,
was fine. Like, we're young, so 4 hours, that's all I need.
yeah.
Get up, wash, rinse, and repeat.
Yep, there you go. What was it, Jeremy, about the business aspect of music that sparked you in there? Because that's a really interesting piece. Most people don't look at the business part of music; they look at music
Yeah.
to become, if you will, a rock star
Yeah.
musician, heading out doing that. What
Mm,
was the business? Why business? Why did it attract you? What incident happened? What was it that you saw
mm,
that sparked that within you to want to have a better understanding of business in
mhm.
relationship to music?
I think for me, it was being a student of the game, if you will, and studying musicians, producers, record labels, understanding how the business works, and
Hmm.
also seeing the stories of like these musicians who have sold tons of records, but now are like have no home, or
I'm
they're not
broke.
being
Yeah,
taken care of. Yeah, broke. So
yeah.
it's like, I don't want that to be the case. And understanding how, if you ownership and control. So it's like
Hmm.
a lot of artists, if you don't know anything, you just the label owns everything. And
Yeah,
then when your time is done, like you hardly get anything. So I'm like, how can I do it where I can maximize how much money I'm able to keep, and build a legacy? Because, I looked at people at the time, like whether it's Barry Gordy, Dr. Dre, whoever, people who owned record labels and put out artists, and how
yeah,
they also were instrumental in creating careers for others. And in a sense, like that's what I wanted to do as well. I wanted to be an artist, but also I wanted to discover and develop and put out artists and ride that.
yeah,
And so it was just kind of having that freedom to create, but also the ownership to be financially stable through it as well.
yeah. I used to tell my kids, I said, oh, I remember when MTV came out and all these bling bling whatever, and I tell them, I
Yeah.
said, those guys are as poor as ever.
Oh,
Those are not theirs, and
yep.
it's an image that
Yep.
they are portraying. but that's
Hmm.
not the truth. And I would always tell them, I said, there's a truth, and then there's that,
Exactly.
and that's not the truth. And
Hmm.
that lie that they propagated on that thing hurt
Hmm.
a lot
And
of
still
folks.
do. And
Yeah, it
still do.
does. It's not
Yeah.
the truth. The truth is much
Hmm.
more of what you were talking about, that grind behind the scene
Yeah.
of 4 hours sleep and doing all the other things that is
Hmm.
I always tell people, and I love to hear your story, Jeremy. Find your passion and be passionate about it. There's nothing like it. And here you
Yeah.
guys found a passion. You were
Hmm.
passionate about it. That 4 hours sleep was like sweetest thing that you ever had, and you're
Yeah.
able to go and stay 100% focused and begin to move. So here you are. You're
Yeah.
doing it. You've accomplished some things that you have set out to do.
Hmm.
And while you're doing all this grind and doing all this stuff, what began to happen to you? Jeremy? What was happening to you as an
And
individual?
yeah, it was like really like the test of perseverance
Yeah,
because, with us being, I mean, there's no way around it. Like we're a white hip hop group in hip
yeah,
hop and a black music. So it's really hard, but it was like we weren't like crying about like, oh, what was me. It was just like, hey, we're here. We have people that support us and respect us, and so, but it was still like we met with record labels. Record labels didn't really know what to do with us because
yeah,
there wasn't really anything like us. And, record labels don't like to take risks.
yep,
So it just became a very tedious journey. And it became to be like I loved creating music and making music and performing, but I began to really detest the business. So
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
I love the music, but detest the business. And it
yeah,
got to a point where um, kind of like the last big thing we did, like we actually performed at Showtime at the Apollo in Harlem
yeah.
on TV. And of course, we got
Wow.
booed off. No surprise
Yeah,
there. We knew going in, like, this is probably going to happen, but we're going to give our best anyways.
yeah,
And sure enough, we did. And I'm like, it's all good, man. I performed on this legendary stage where, like,
yeah, yeah.
legends have performed and legends have been booed off of that stage.
Oh
So I'm like, hey,
yeah, there's
Lauren
tons of
Hill
them,
got booed
man.
off. If Lauren Hill got
Yeah,
booed off, like we're okay. Our
yeah,
career is about to be out of here.
yeah,
But I think
tons
that
of
was
them.
like the last big thing we did. And then just some of our industry relationships that we had started to dissolve a little bit. And it did become kind of one of those situations that you hear about, the cliches of, just kind of the cutthroat, and people will
Yeah,
take from you while you're on your way up, but then they stop calling you or stop setting meetings. And
yeah,
it just felt really empty. I was like, this is not a good space for me. This is not a good industry. And I, as much as I love music and creating, I'm like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And this is what I thought it was, because I started writing when I was at that
yeah,
table, that in the lunchroom at a new school. I was 15 years old writing music, and then fast forward about 12 years, and I'm like, this is not what I thought that was my purpose, but it
yeah,
was not my purpose. It was a passion, and it was not my purpose. And that's when I started to understand the difference between passion and purpose. And then it's like, well, what do I do now? Because this is like
yeah.
for the past being a teenager into your early adulthood, it's like this is all I thought it was. So
Hmm.
where do we go from here?
Yeah.
So that was the piece I had to work out.
So now this is when it really begins, because
Hmm.
I love the fact that you got there, your passion, you did all this stuff, but then there's something still missing, and you're
Hmm.
now beginning to inquire about it. What is it?
Yeah.
Jeremy, as you're there in that space and you voice that question, what is it? Where am I? Do I belong?
Hmm.
How did that impact you when you realized this is not it? And when that question was leveled by you to you, how did you begin to respond to that?
Yeah, that was really difficult. That transition was hard because all of my contacts were either in the music industry or within the telecom job that I had. And that was just a job to me. I'm like, I just need this job while I'm making music because I
Yeah.
don't like this job. It's just like I need a check coming in, but all my
Yeah.
contacts were either there or the music industry. And so at that point, when I decided to hang it up, it really was, gosh, maybe 2 or 3 years of just kind of being like mentally, I don't know if lost is the word, maybe confused, because everything that I thought I was going to be and do, like that door is closed, and I
Yeah.
closed the door. I mean, partially it was closed by music industry, but I can't blame external forces. I'm like, I said it's time to move on. So I if it was closing, I slammed it and it's closed now.
Yeah.
But now it's like, man, if this is what I thought my life was going to be. So I am not really sure what to do from here. So one of the things I did end up doing that was pretty instrumental was went back to school, went and got my master's, and because I was applying for jobs, I enjoyed marketing. So I was like, I enjoy
Hmm.
marketing. I have a talent for it. That's what my undergrad degree was in. So maybe there's something in there, and went back to school. And part of the program was you do all these assessments, personality assessments and
Oh yeah.
behavioral and things like that. And for the first time, it was able to put labels on things that I knew about myself that I couldn't really assign a label to and understand.
Yeah.
But as I'm taking some of these assessments, I'm like, wow, that is me. And that is so, it's kind of gaining knowledge, a lot of prayer, of course. Like I
Yeah.
pray a lot throughout the day, every day. So there's some spiritual intervention. But then there's also just getting to know who I am, and
Yeah.
what are my talents. How can I find an intersection of talent and passion and purpose?
Yeah.
So, long story short from that, because we don't have a 5-hour podcast today with you, Ken, unfortunately. But long story short, through that process, I did get a marketing job and ended up starting my own marketing consultancy. And even through that, like, I'm like, this is a gift, I like this, but landing upon my purpose of being a messenger of hope. So my whole everything that I went through, like from 15 to through my 20s, like this is my passion, not my purpose. And having to rediscover, reinvent, and really get to know who I am, like I'm not unique in that. That was my
Yeah.
story. But man, I've talked to so many people, and a majority of people have a similar kind of story, but they don't have the tools. So now
Yeah.
it's like, for me, it's like there's hope, there's tools. Like, let me, that's what inspired me to write my book, so I can help other people out who have gone through a situation of transition or uncertainty.
Yeah, one of the I would steer anyone to begin to look at some of those personality tests. There's
Yeah.
so many of them today that you can have access to online.
Hmm.
Take a couple of them and begin to get some insight as to the mechanics of you, if you will.
Yeah.
And once you begin to see some of the mechanics of you, it brings you a great deal of understanding of yourself,
Hmm.
and you now have some kind of a foundation by which you can begin to move forward. Is really, really important. Same happened to me, Jeremy. I
Hmm.
was in marketing as well,
Okay.
and marketing from, oh my God, so many of those personality tests is
Hmm.
absolutely crazy. By the time you came out of there, you know exactly how your mind clicked and
Yeah.
so forth.
It's
And
pretty
I
amazing.
recommend it, guys. I really do. It's
Yeah.
important. There's some good ones out there. So, Jeremy, here you are. You recognize that, hey, I need to get a couple of changes. You'd mentioned tools,
Hmm.
and you're here within this mix, and you talked about some people. They're there as well. They've gone through some of the metamorphosis as far as individually changing and growing, but lots of them you recognize don't have
Yeah.
tools. What were
Yes.
some of those tools that you saw as you're moving through? I'm sure some of it came from those personality tests, because what will happen there is that you began to want to know more. You want the
Yeah.
information, and so you began to become a seeker of that type of knowledge. As
Hmm.
you are seeking and hunting, what were some of those tools, Jeremy, that you started bringing into your space to
Yeah.
assist you now to move from A to B?
Yeah. One thing I did that was really the foundation of like how I live now, and what I base the book off is called Edge. And I would call it like living on the edge. And Edge is an acronym. So it's eliminate distractions, discover yourself, generate goals, and enact discipline. And this is like a model, and this is the tool, and
Yeah.
it's very sequential. It's like to begin the work on yourself and to really tap into what your purpose is, like that eliminating distractions, like it has to go in order. You have to eliminate these distractions and gain that focus in order for you to even begin the work on yourself. And these things here, these cell phones, this is probably number one in most people's lives in terms of
Yeah.
distraction. I know it is for me. There's everything is on here: games, news,
Yeah.
videos, social media, everything. So first it's like identifying what are these things in your life that are taking away. It could be people, it could be
Hmm.
relationships that you have, friends that just aren't good friends. It could be that boyfriend or girlfriend that's just not good for you. You know, it could be food or entertainment, something that is like taking up more time and it's taking from you as opposed to pouring into you. So identifying what these things are and like making a list and like let's identify and be aware, because most of the time we're not aware. We're like in this sea of distraction that we never
Hmm.
agreed to jump in. It just
Yeah.
swallowed us up and we didn't even know what happened.
Yeah.
So one, just being aware of those distractions, and then second, like discovering yourself. Like once you've scraped away those distractions, then you can do some of these assessments, you know, that you and I were talking about, like understanding what some of those tools are. And there's many of them out there. Like there's a few that I use, but you can
Yeah.
also Google like personality tests or assessment. Just do anything to learn
Yeah.
a little bit more
Just to
about
get it.
yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
just start, man. Um,
Yeah.
and then like once you know about yourself, like now let's start to create some goals based on what we learned about ourselves. And then once you create those goals, it's like actually pursuing it and having
Yeah.
the discipline, because you can say, hey, I'm going to do this. And you can even put a like the SMART goals. What is it? Specific, measurable, attainable,
Yeah. Hmm.
whatever are and time based.
Yeah.
So you can have all that, but if you don't do the work, like it's just a goal, you know? So what are
Yeah.
you doing every day to make sure that you're actually working towards those goals? And that's the discipline piece of it all. And those
Yeah.
are the tools. Like that is the tool.
Yeah. I tell folks that focusing on one thing and is nothing like it. I grew up in the church, Jeremy, and there's
Hmm.
a scripture in Romans that says, "Herein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith." And I tell people that is the secret to life.
Hmm.
Faith to faith means that you are focusing, and I would say to people, from one project, one faith project to the other.
Mm.
And so when you have your focus from faith to faith, as you are moving from one faith project to another, what's happening? You are becoming disciplined, you're
Hmm.
becoming focused, all the things that you talked about. And as you go past that one, when you're finished with that project,
Hmm.
there's another project from faith to faith. And so you are
Yeah.
having this movement, the just shall live by faith. That's what it says. You
Hmm.
got to move from one to faith. And so
Yeah.
you have to become focused. That's how this human being is designed to be. The scripture talks about meditation. Meditation can bring one's focus in.
Hmm.
All of these other tools out there, but you cannot move until you become focused. As
Yeah.
Jeremy said, if you're distracted, Jeremy, I fast. I tell people I do a fast routine. I fast from food
Hmm.
and entertainment,
Yeah.
TV, everything. I just
Yeah.
have a time that
Hmm.
I am fasting,
Yeah.
and it incorporates everything so that I can begin to learn how to separate things, notice
Hmm.
things, recognize things, begin to make my notes and begin to make the adjustments
Yeah.
so that I can begin to move forward, as Jeremy says. And one of the main things I always try to impress to people that those who have ears, let them hear. That means that there's
Hmm.
someone inside that is listening other than this thing that is on my head.
Yep.
And so we must learn how to transition. And they've heard me talk about this many times, Jeremy. Transition from a hearer, from a listener to a hearer. Because
Hmm.
when the hearer hears, that's the soul of the man, that the inner part of that man. That person is going to cause a focus that will pull people and circumstances into your life and start creating. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, you just try it and just see for yourself if you think I'm
No.
lying, man.
No,
Yeah,
yeah, I believe that there's times where, like, I cut the cable many years ago, and I was like,
yeah,
oh, I don't want to not have cable because I want options. But you do it, and it's done, and you're like, wow, that's actually not as bad as I thought,
not as
and I
bad.
actually have
Yeah,
more free time. Another like quick story, really in alignment with focus and what you're talking about. We had this assignment in grad school, like we were supposed to journal, and one of the assignments was like, write out your goals and what you want to do. So I had all these things listed out that I want to do, and turned it in. And my professor gave it back a week later, and there was all this like red ink writing all over it. And he had wrote a note at the top and said, "Schedule a time to come see me." And I was like, "Oh man!" So I went in and talked to him. I'm like, "So, um, he said, Jeremy, you're never going to be able to do all these things. I was like, what do you mean?
yeah,
Because I've instilled in myself, like, you can do anything's
yeah,
possible. Because I had a lot. I mean, if I remember the list, it was like, because I was still doing some music, so I was going to make music. I've still kind of had this dream of like voicing like different voices of a cartoon or something.
yeah, yeah.
So there was probably 15 different things. And he's like, Jeremy, you won't live long enough to do all these things. And in my mind, I'm thinking of like examples of people who have done a lot of these things. And he said, you're too distracted. He's like, you here's what you need to do. And it was really good advice for me, and I'll share with you and your audience. And it was basically like, prioritize these, because you have 10 things and you're like, I want to do all these. He's like, prioritize them. Which
Yeah,
one do you want to do the most? Put some time boundaries around it. And whatever that means for you, maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 18 months, maybe it's 3 years, but just focus on that one thing. And then when that time comes up, if you've accomplished it, cool, check it off, go to the next thing. If you haven't, then reevaluate. And if you want to extend that deadline, extend it, but don't start the next thing until you've done it.
yeah,
And that was really helpful to me. Like, I fought that advice because I still was like, I want to be able to do all of these different things. But then at the same time, I'm like, you can't do a good job at everything if your attention is split out across 10 different
yeah,
things. So it's like, yeah, pouring into that one thing. There's people who are like, oh, I need to have a backup plan. Well, the backup plan is priority number 2, 3, 4, 5,
yeah,
6, whatever. So you don't have to work on two things at the same time.
yeah.
So that was really good advice that helped me out a lot, and I've shared that with a lot of people too, and it's been really helpful.
Yeah, every time I've done that focus piece, Jeremy,
Hmm.
it was always accomplished.
Yeah,
Always. There's not
yeah,
a time that I can remember that it was not, because I believe that we there's other things behind the scene that happens when we connect. I
hmm,
call it fate, and I believe that power pulls circumstances, people will pop into your space that you're like, wow, I haven't heard or seen you in 100 years, and
yes,
that's the person that you need to take you to that next space. And so
yeah,
it's it's just happened all the time. People call it
hmm,
synchronicity or whatever, but it is based on fate. Once you activate it, it's a law that makes things happen. So here
yeah,
you are. I love the title of your book, Finding Your Edge. Jeremy, talk to me about how did that came about? How did that whole book? You're going through a lot of things. You're seeing
hmm,
things, the personality tests, all of these things.
hmm,
How did that begin to formulate in your thought process as to put a book? I'm sure after you see some of this stuff working for you,
hmm.
then you began. So as you're seeing that, what started to happen in your mind, your mindset, Jeremy, that caused you to begin to head towards the book, if you will?
Yeah. Well, I think writing a book was probably one of the items on that list that my professor wrote through.
Hmm.
And I knew I wanted to write a book, but I didn't know what it was going to be about, when I was going to put it out. And it was a point in my life, after I had gone through like some job loss and still trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing on this earth.
Yeah,
But then also reflecting back, like, what is my story? Like, what has been implanted in me that I can help others with. And what
yeah,
it really came down to was like my whole experience of uh, music and kind of following a dream and finding your purpose is what I call it. So I sat down, and this book is like 10 years in the making. I
Yeah.
didn't write it all at once. Like I started it almost 10 years ago, and I wrote on it for about 7 years, and then I put it down for 3. And then because I felt like it wasn't ready yet, I was like, I need to live more because there's more that needs to be in this book that I haven't experienced yet.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where I was like, all right, it's time to go. So I finished
Yeah.
up the book and put it out. But yeah, it was really what inspired it was, again, looking at myself, my life, what my message could be to help other people. Because I like, again, goes back to being like a messenger of hope. Like I wanted some, I don't want to put a book out just to put a book out. I want it to mean something, and I want it to help somebody. Like if one person read my book and said, this really helped me, like to me, that's worth 10 years of writing a book. If I'm able to transform somebody's life through giving them hope, giving them tools, showing them my experience, because a lot of time it's relatability. Sometimes you
Yeah.
think you're the only person that's going through something and nobody
Oh
will
yeah.
understand me, but maybe my journey isn't the same as yours, but I've gone through some things too. And man, if you're in a room of 10 people, so of those other 10 people, but nobody talks
Yeah.
about it, you know? So it's like, let's talk about it, let's connect, and let's find that there's hope beyond whatever your current situation is.
Yeah, you guys are listening to Jeremy and I, Finding Your Edge. Get that book, man. Um, because the one word that he has been saying and gravitating back to, back and forth, is hope. This current space that we are in, you could see the hopelessness.
Yeah.
Just turn on your TV,
Yeah.
and the first 50 seconds of that stuff, whatever comes over there, you'll see hopelessness all
Hmm.
on the TV. And so to have hope interjected in that space is nothing but bright light. And so I encourage you
Yeah.
guys to go and get his book. Some of your friends may be hurting, and you know them, and you've been trying to get to them, and you can't seem to do it. Sometimes because you're too close to the proximity of that
Mm.
friend. That's why you need an outside source. And so grab a book. It's non-threatening, um, and the message may be the same thing that you're saying, but from a different individual.
Yeah.
And you'd be amazed how that will impact that individual. So for your friends and family members, grab the book and give it to them. And as I said, it's a non-threatening thing, but those words on those pages carry so much power. It'll change your life. So Jeremy,
Yeah.
here you are. You it took several years. I know how that process goes, and you began to pour yourself into the book.
Hmm.
And once you had all the data released from you, what did it make you feel like once you were there, you're finished, and you're looking at this product that took you 10 plus years to put together, and
Hmm.
you're probably exhausted from all of it, and you're just looking at it going, I'm so glad it's done. What was
Yeah.
that experience like, Jeremy, once you
Yeah.
got the last
It was
page?
like this for the people who can actually see the video. If not, you'll be able, it was like, it was like, it was an exhale.
Yeah.
And it was, if you've ever had like a really good meal and you've had that, like that's what it was. Or you've gone through something and you've a good experience, because like writing my book wasn't daunting. It was, again, almost therapy. It was like the 15-year
Yeah.
old Jeremy writing rhymes at the lunchroom table. It was therapeutic for me, but it was also just like, all right, I'm ready, you know? And I'm a perfectionist with everything, with music. Like I was writing, producing, mixing, everything. So with the book, it's like I'm writing it, editing it. And I did work with an editor this time and book designer, but like I'm like, I can work on this book for 10 more years, or I can put it out now,
Yeah.
like it's still like I can update it. Like I feel very confident in the book that I've written. I've gotten great feedback on it, and it hit like number 2 on life transformation charts the week
Yeah.
that it came out. So
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you so much for that. But I'm like, this I'm excited about it, because I'm like, this is done.
Yeah.
I don't like, my gift is not just here anymore. Like I can give it to people and put it out there, and that's what I want more people to do, because all of us have a gift, all of us have a purpose. But I think
Yeah.
one of two things. One, we don't know what that is. And two, we know what it is, but we're not doing anything with it. So you're not really benefiting the world and people around you by just holding on to that gift. That gift was meant for you to share and help other people with. So now I'm like, my book is done. I can finally share it. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, that is awesome, man. And like I said, guys, just grab. I'm going to provide all of Jeremy's stuff so you can have access to him. Jeremy, we talked about hope from the onset of this podcast. We just talked
Mhm.
about how the current state of the world, the universe, is a state of just pain and hopelessness.
Yeah.
There's someone that's been listening to us. They're sitting there and their interest is a little perked up in their life, Jeremy. They're sitting there, some darkness is there.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Talk to that individual for a minute to bring some hope into their hopeless situation,
Yeah.
to pull them in so that they can be able to come and have a conversation with you at a different level. I tell people when you purchase the book, you're having a different
Mm.
conversation with that individual, a deeper one.
Yeah.
And so give, bring some hope, if you will, Jeremy, to someone that is sitting listening to us for a couple of minutes,
Yeah.
and to encourage them.
Yeah. No, thank you for the opportunity to do that because I think it's important. There are people there's a lot of people that are hopeless or their hope has taken a hit because they're going through something. And there's so many people out there that they don't have a safe space to do that.
Yeah,
So if that person is you when you're listening to this right now, whatever you're going through, I've been through some really challenging situations in life, like really, really challenging. And uncertainty. And you may be in a position right now where you can't see what tomorrow will bring. You don't know what tonight is going to look like. But one thing that I do know is that you're still here, you're alive, you're breathing, which means your mission is not done. And this
yeah,
trial that you're going through is building you up for something greater. And that was something that I didn't understand at the time when I was going through my transition, but I did hold on and I was very faithful in my belief that if I'm still here, then I still matter and I'm here for a reason, just like you are here for a reason. Um, Whatever you're going through right now, like just wake up tomorrow, give it the best that you can. Some days you may not feel like it, but that's okay. Just get out of bed, do your routine, and take an action, one action each day, and doors will open up. Like Kim was saying, it's like once you start to at least go on a path, like someone will be brought into your life, a
yeah,
situation will happen in your life, and doors will open. And it's not easy, um, but what you're going through now is a testament that you will be able to help somebody else with in the future. So just hang in there, do not give up, you got this.
yeah. Absolutely, as Jeremy said, you got this, man.
Yeah.
And to let you guys know that you're not alone, you could reach out to Jeremy. You could reach out to myself. There's people out there. Don't think you're alone. That's one of the reasons why I put together Threads of Enlightenment, is for the singular purpose is to let people know that they're not alone,
Mm,
and that they're not the only ones that have been visited in dark places. Everyone to a degree, but I started this to have them hear the story of those that have navigated onto the other side and the
mm,
tools that they use. So you guys are listening to us. You're not alone. I'm going to provide Jeremy's information. Reach him. If you need to speak to me, do the same, because we want to encourage you and let you know that you're still here,
mm.
and you have an assignment, as Jeremy puts it.
That's
You
it.
got to find your edge, and that's it.
Yes,
Your edge
that's
is
it.
your assignment, man. I'm
That is
telling
your
you,
assignment. I'm
it
telling you, because
is.
well, let me say this, Ken. Like the edge is so deep because if you
Yeah,
think about an edge, it represents the end of one thing and the beginning of another thing. Like that
yeah,
is the edge.
yeah,
So when you're doing this work on yourself, like you're literally transforming your life. That life that you used to have was what that was before, and the life that you were going to have, that's on the other side of this edge. So
yeah.
hang in there and do that work on yourself and just flourish when it's all said and done.
Excellent, man. Jeremy, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. I
Yeah.
just love this. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your journey with us. And we're going to provide all of those that are listening his information. And as I said before, the book, get the book, because that book houses wisdom, understanding, and insights that will change your life. And any of you guys that are in that dark space, there is hope for you. And you heard Jeremy's story, that there is hope. And so we want to encourage you to get into his space so that you can see and have a guide that will walk with you, hold your hands, and have some conversation. Jeremy, again, thank you for coming, man.
Ken, thanks, man. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, sir.